So I think we're online as well as here live in the temple. Welcome to this class on Buddhist mindfulness on this really lovely summer evening. It's such a cool breeze inside here. I was noticing that as part of my mindfulness practice, just feeling the coolness when I walk in here, and then just being able to see everyone walk in and pick their own place. It felt very lovely to see you all walk in that way. I just know where you needed to go to sit. And I wanted to start us out again just by very short meditation in a moment, just to give us a chance to settle into our space. And I did a little welcoming last time that was quite long, but today I simply just want to say, as we gather here in community at the Dharma Temple, I wanted to share a quote by Bell Hooks, who's a really wonderful African-American Buddhist teacher and spiritual guide in general. And this is what she said about community. She said that beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation, by each of us claiming all of the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in this world. So I wanted to just offer that for all of us as we gather here in the community this evening. And my first Buddhist teacher, who also happens to be Jeff Slotnick's first teacher, we both met 20 years ago over at Chifang Temple here in the community in University Heights. And Venerable Yizhe, she was our teacher, a nun from Taiwan. And she was really a bridge between the East and the West. She was a very wonderful translator, not literal, but just translator of Buddhism from Asia to the West. And one thing that I really loved about her was that she would always sing some kind of a song, and she was always really joyful. And I wouldn't in any way be able to match her chanting, but I just wanted to offer, as we come into stillness, just like a one line of a song. And this is again from the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition. We have a beautiful monastery in the Escondido area called Deer Park. Thich Nhat Hanh, if you don't know, he was a very beloved Zen teacher from Vietnam, also peace activist and poet. And so this is a song that the monastics frequently sing in his monastery. So as I'm just singing this very short song, just help yourself to arrive or welcome yourself into the space, and we're just going to sit together for 5 minutes. I'm just going to sing this very briefly, and then I'm going to ring the bell, and then we can all just sit together and fully arrive in the space. So it goes something like this. I have arrived. I am whole in the here and in the now. I am solid. I am free in the ultimate. I dwell. So let's just all sit together for a few minutes. the second half of this evening, we'll have an opportunity for a longer sit. So this is just sort of helping us to settle into the space and more fully arrive into our bodies and hearts and minds for the evening, our hour that we're spending together. So this is a series on Buddhist mindfulness, and if you missed last time, no problem. Each and every class on its own is complete, so it's not necessary that you attend every class, just rather whenever you can show up. But it's basically a class on Wednesday evening about Buddhist mindfulness. And the teachings that I'm going to be offering are directly from the Buddha from 2,600 years ago. And tonight's lesson is going to be on mindfulness of breathing. And there's actually a whole teaching, a very detailed teaching that the Buddha offered on mindfulness of breathing. And the teaching was called in Pali. Pali is the Indian language that was spoken at the time of the Buddha. It was called the Anapanasati Sutta. So sutta is a teaching. Sutra in Sanskrit is basically the same. But the Buddha gave a whole teaching on mindfulness of breathing that he outlined in 16 different steps. So tonight in our meditation, I'm just going to cover the first 4 steps that relate directly to paying attention to the breathing and being mindful of it in different ways. So I just wanted to start again with a story this evening from the Zen tradition, and it's about a Zen student that had been given an instruction on just paying attention to his breathing by his master, by his teacher. And the teacher said, "You're new to this practice. I just want you to go sit every day and just pay attention to your breath, basically all day long." And he lasted about 6 weeks and then sort of came to his master in his daily interview in despair and said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm completely losing my interest and following my breath. It's just the most boring thing I can imagine. And can you please give me something that's more interesting to my mind, where I can actually stay awake and not fall asleep? So as it often goes in a Zen story, the Zen teacher then applies a Zen stick. And so he grabs the student by the back of his neck and drags him down to the river at the bottom of the monastery and basically submerges his head into the river. And probably just before the student turned purple, he let him, come up again. And in that moment, it goes, of course, that the student became instantly enlightened and really appreciated the breath in new ways, So, so he really gained an understanding of how precious our breath really is. And even if it might not feel very interesting as we're sitting and following our breathing and meditation, but it is what keeps us alive, this really miracle of a process that goes on inside of our body is what keeps us alive moment by moment. And I love how it's expressed in the Tibetan tradition, where they actually refer to the preciousness of this human rebirth. And the teaching there actually is that the Buddha said that only when you are reincarnated in a human body are you able to gain full enlightenment, are you able to really fully awaken to the truth of life. That as an animal or as another being, you might not have the full capacity to really transform your suffering, your mental suffering, and gain complete mental health, and that we have that capacity as a human being. And a lot of people on earth might not feel, oh, this is a precious human rebirth. Maybe they are actually living in quite horrendous conditions. And so I just wanted to say that as a caveat, that the Buddha always said, in order to really be able to practice, one basically has to have the basic needs met. One has to have, enough water, clean drinking water, enough food, and maybe even a shelter, although certainly the Buddha and his monastics practiced in the forest in India. So I'm not wanting to deny that there's a lot of suffering in this world where people might not have pristine, conditions for practice, but nevertheless, even a lot of the times when we find ourselves in the face of suffering in this human body, maybe we're struck with grief or with sadness or despair, that even just this capacity to be able to feel the grief, to feel the sadness, is already something really precious that we can actually learn to attend to challenging emotions by giving ourselves compassion and attending with a loving attention to our feelings that are present, whatever they might be in our beings at any given moment. So I always love the teaching in Buddhism about interconnection or interconnectedness. And certainly when I think about this life breath, and when I think about how we as humans breathe in the oxygen given out by the trees, and then how we breathe out this carbon dioxide that then the trees take in as their life force, it's just a beautiful reminder how precious this breath is, this process that goes on in each and every one of us every moment. So it's really something precious that we can connect with in our bodies. So I used to go out with a dear friend for many years to the Anzo Borrego Desert. She had a little trailer there. And I had never been to the desert. I was born and raised in Germany, and the only deserts that I had seen pictures of, or maybe actually I went to Morocco once, so I saw the desert in Morocco, but it was more like a sandy desert, and I didn't really see any life force there, or any animals, or trees, or bushes, or cactus. So when I went to this desert, though, I would get up really early in the morning, and what I had done is I saw that there were many animals, bunnies and coyotes and birds. So I would bring these carrots to the desert and then chop them up in the morning and put them out for the bunnies, and then bring bird seed. So in the early morning, they were already sort of lined up, waiting for me before the sun rose. So I did my sort of sacred duty in offering these offerings to the animals, and then before sunrise, I would walk further and just do a very mindful and slow walking meditation, just feeling my feet on the earth, on the desert floor, and then walking to a spot where I had dug a hole, and I would just sit there facing east and waiting for the moment for the sun to rise. And I always remember this really precious moment. Right at that moment when the sun rose or came out of the earth, there was always this one precious moment of complete stillness. And then the sun would rise and sort of life on earth would really pick up. And it always felt like I could not only feel my breathing, but I could feel the breathing of the animals around, of the mountains around. It seemed like everything began to breathe. So it really felt like it connected me at a deeper level to mindfulness of breathing that I had already practiced for many years in temples and on my own in my meditations every single day. So ever since then, I've just really loved being outdoors and practicing outdoors as much as I can, either walking or sitting in nature. It's really wonderful to practice that. So I wanted to talk a little bit this evening about why mindfulness of breathing. And I think this can be said for all meditative traditions, not just in Buddhist religion, that really the breath is considered the primary object of attention. Any aspect of a religion that practices sort of contemplation and meditation, most of the time the breath is used as the primary object or focus of meditation. And I love how in meditation we really learn how much the breath functions like a channel that connects our bodies and minds. So the breath obviously always happens in the present moment. The breath never happens a moment before in the past. The breath never happens in the future. The breath always draws us right into the present moment, right into the here and now, and really connects us with our aliveness in the body, because there's this movement in the body when we connect to the in-breath and the the out breath, and we feel the sensations in the body at the same time. It's just here. It connects us to our aliveness in this moment. So really, when we bring attention to our breathing, our body automatically is here instead of the mind wandering into memories of the past or hopes or dreams or fears of the future. We're just here. And when we pay attention to the breath over a period of time in meditation, it's really an opportunity to let go of any expectations, of any worries, just being, learning to be with the breath. And it's really a way of touching peace in our bodies and minds when the body unifies with the body, when the mind unifies with the body and just follows the gentle rhythms of the breath, of the in-breath and the out-breath. And the other aspect that I see about mindfulness of breathing, that we can really send ourselves a message when we're sitting there and just following the breath, that it's enough in this moment just to breathe and to be alive. There's nothing else to do or undo. Our value in this moment of meditation doesn't depend on what we do in the world, how many beautiful deeds we do. In this moment, it's just enough to sit here, to be alive, and to breathe. There's so many expectations out there in the world, or so many plans, so many obligations, and when we sit in meditation, we can just remember to return to the present moment and to the breath. And I feel like that's something really sacred, a sacred activity of the day, if we can give ourselves that. So mindfulness really reminds us of this interconnection between the body and the mind, also because you might have noticed, or if you ever pay attention to the breathing in meditation for a longer period of time, or even in daily life, for example, when you're agitated, the breath tends to be more rough, irregular, and fast because your mind is agitated. So there's this connection between the mind and the body. And then when the mind is more calm, the breath also becomes more calm, more smooth, and tends to slow down. And then on the other hand, when we might perceive a threat in the environment, we often hold our breath. So there's this very direct link between the body and mind, and it even expresses itself in our breathing. And so when we sit in meditation and calm the activities of the mind and calm the body, by just simply paying attention to the breathing, we can really calm all the activities of the mind and the body together and just come into the space of peace, of peacefulness through our breathing. So I wanted to talk this evening a little bit about a very important teaching that the Buddha shared in his lifetime, and he called them the 3 characteristics, and they're also often referred to as the marks of existence or the insights that the Buddha gleaned in his meditations before his enlightenment. And these are not just Buddha's insight or Buddhist insights, they're simply, I think we would find them to be true regardless if we're Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim, or we follow another tradition, if we're Jewish. I think we would find these to be true regardless, but certainly, to find out for yourself. It's not like this is a doctrine and I'm telling you this and this is so, but just sort of pay attention, is this so for myself in my daily life? So one of these marks of existence, I'm sure that if you've come to attend other classes, other Buddhist classes, is the teaching of impermanence. So I wanted to preface this by saying that these 3 characteristics, I want to relate them this evening to the breath and to mindfulness of breathing, and how we can gain an understanding of them through our breathing practices. So one of them, as I already said, is impermanence. And so that's just simply to say that nothing ever stays the same in most basic terms. That, for example, right now we're here, and in an hour we're already on our way, maybe going home or going to another activity. So that's already an example of impermanence. Another one might be that if you go home tonight and you look at a picture of yourself as a 5-year-old, and you look at yourself in the mirror, you're going to see a very different image. So that's another example of impermanence. And the way that we can even touch into this teaching of impermanence through the breath is that we will find, as we pay attention to the breath over a period of time, that it never expresses itself in the same way. Sometimes it might be long, sometimes it might be short, sometimes it might be fast, sometimes it might be slow, sometimes rough, sometimes smooth. And really here, the importance of the teachings of impermanence that the Buddha offered is that if we count on things to be the same and to remain the same in our communities, in our lives, with loved ones, whoever, if we seek happiness on the outside, it's probably going to lead to some kind of disappointment at some point, because everything constantly changes. Even our own bodies change constantly. And so if we have a problem or difficulty with our body aging, for example, or turning gray or whatever it might be, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. And it's easier said than done, obviously, but it's a really important teaching, the teaching of impermanence, to just know, oh yes, everything changes moment by moment, and certainly over time we can see this teaching of impermanence, and then we can observe it in our breathing as well during meditation. And then the second teaching that I want to relate to the breath, the second really important teaching that the Buddha offered, was that of non-self. And that sometimes turns into a little bit more complicated teaching, but basically just to say that what we experience as this I, this is me, this is mine, this is myself. If we look deeper in meditation, we really find out that it's just a process going on that's, again, constantly in flux. It never stays the same. This is not just a solid I, me, mine, myself. And it's actually a rather impersonal experience. And we can see that in meditation, how even the breath is impersonal, in that it's not really I that's breathing, but rather this process that goes on in our body moment by moment, from the time that we're born until the moment that we die. So thank goodness it's not an I, because if it depended on us to make this breathing possible, we'd probably all be dead, long dead, because if we didn't have that strong mindfulness where we would remember to breathe moment by moment, we would all have perished already. So we can really learn from the breath itself how this is just the breath breathing itself. It's not an I breathing. And so the Buddha actually referred to this, what we call an I, as the five aggregates. He just basically said, whatever we consider an I is simply five different things. It's basically the body, its feelings, its perceptions, its mental formations, and its consciousness. And they're all constantly changing. The body is constantly changing. Feelings are constantly changing. Maybe tonight we're feeling a certain way, and then tomorrow we're feeling completely different. Tonight there might be a sense of peacefulness, and tomorrow morning we wake up and we feel agitated. The way we perceive ourselves or the community or others also changes. It's not fixed. It changes based on your conditioning, how you perceive things. And the same with thoughts. Thoughts constantly come and go. They're never the same. It's never just like one thought comes in and it always stays the same thought. It's just always in flux. So with consciousness, that's a little bit harder to understand, and I'm not going into those teachings this evening about the five aggregates, but just to give you an example of what non-self, what the Buddha actually meant by non-self. So if you find yourself in meditation, like the Zen student that I mentioned in the beginning, and you're really getting horribly bored with your breathing and meditation, there's often in certain Buddhist traditions where the teacher says, well, try to work with an inquiry in your meditation. And so if you find yourself bored in your meditation around breathing, it might be helpful to ask yourself in your meditation, who is actually breathing? Or am I breathing, or am I being breathed? And then it's just sort of an invitation to add a little bit of juiciness to your meditation, to ask yourself a question. And it's not a question to be answered with your head, but simply you ask the question, who's actually breathing? And then just drop into your body and include that in your meditation practice. It's just an offering. You don't have to do that, obviously, but just an offering of how one could work in a more interesting way in your meditation practice. And then the third characteristic, and sort of a mark of the Buddha's teaching, is that of dukkha. And a lot of you, I'm sure, have heard this word. It often is translated as suffering. And a more global understanding could be that it doesn't have to be something dramatic like being in horrible pain or being terribly depressed, but it could just be the sense of dissatisfaction that, I'm feeling well in this moment, but I really want another experience. I want something more. It's sort of this feeling of never enoughness where you always seek a new experience. And I think that happens to a lot of us when we're not fully awakened, like the Buddha was, that, I don't know, you come here and you feel satisfied, and then you feel like, well, I have to come back. I need to get another experience. So it's just sort of this understanding again of if we seek satisfaction outside of ourselves, that we will probably encounter some kind of suffering inside of ourselves, because there really isn't a lasting happiness found in the world, on this earth, in this human body. It doesn't mean that we can't have a wonderful time and we can't have joy and dance or sing or whatever else, but just to know that every experience ultimately changes. And fortunately, it can also change from something really negative that we're experiencing to something positive, but also then just to know, and that probably won't last either. And it's really a way of helping us find more of a sense of balance and equanimity in our being, when we just know everything changes, and not to rely too much on outside conditions or situations for happiness. So some other examples of that might be, we're in this beautiful partnership, or we're married, and then one day our spouse or partner tells us, we're getting divorced, or they're separating from us. That's a more intense experience of suffering that one might encounter as a human being. Or maybe the position that you're holding at work, if you're working right now, and then your this position gets eliminated, probably another source of suffering. Or maybe next year Jeff announces that he's moving the Dharma Bang Temple to Florida. Maybe a source of suffering for some of us who've lived in this community or participated and practiced in this community and enjoyed being here. And then the same we might experience in our mindfulness of breathing, maybe even this evening. Maybe this evening, as we're closing our eyes and we're coming into our meditation space, and we're experiencing the breath as quite pleasant, as calm and peaceful. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it shifts. And, maybe tomorrow you're meditating and you have a stuffy nose, or you have a respiratory ailment. And now all of a sudden the breathing or the breath practice is unpleasant. So just to say, nothing ever stays the same, and everything can easily turn into something unsatisfactory. So just to know that, and just to know pleasant can turn into unpleasant, and then unpleasant can turn into pleasant again, and just to really ride those waves and find a sense of balance while you're riding the waves of life, while you're riding these waves of different emotions and experiences coming in and out. So I wanted to say a few things about how to work with the breath in formal meditation practice before we have an opportunity to practice together. And so in this Anapanasati Sutta, the teaching by the Buddha on the 16 steps of mindful breathing, he actually starts out sort of as a preliminary practice by saying that one ought to retire into a forest or the root of a tree or an empty place. So this situation is none of those, but that's just to say that being in a sacred place like a temple is also obviously very conducive to meditation. It's just basically any place that is conducive to finding a place of refuge from the world, from daily living. And sometimes that might not be possible. We might not find ourselves in life circumstances where we can say, okay, we're just going to get up and drive and sit down in a temple to meditate. Maybe, we have families, we have kids, and we can't really come to a temple. One of the teachers that I most admire, she's actually no longer with us, but she was a lay practitioner, and she was born and raised and lived all her life in India, and her name was Ma. And everybody that knew her knew that she was very much an enlightened being. And she came to Buddhism, and it wasn't possible for her to find herself sitting in a peaceful temple, but rather she was at home attending to her children. She was at home attending to her husband in her case. And I think in the end, actually, everybody tragically died, and that's when she really deepened her practice. But all this to say, she had many people in her community visit her and learn how to just follow the breathing, even when there was a lot of noise around, there was a lot of cars around, honking around, that she taught that one can still find refuge within oneself, even in a noisy environment. So I just want to say that even though the Buddha recommended to practice in a forest or at a foot of a tree or an empty hut, we can find a moment of peacefulness, of going inside, really pretty much, maybe not in every situation, but in a whole lot more situations than we think are conducive to meditation practice. And the Buddha also encouraged us to, at the onset of meditation, as you're sitting down in meditation, to bring the intention to, for this time that you're sitting, to let go as best as you can of your worries, of your concerns, of your responsibilities, of your tasks, of any planning. And of course, we know that the mind is most of the time very active, sometimes even racing, just jumping from thought to thought, which is often in meditation referred to as the monkey mind, like a monkey jumping from tree to tree, never resting. So often we find our minds in that same place as well. But we can at least still bring the intention, okay, for this time of sitting, I'm just going to sit here and do the best that I can to leave all my daily life concerns at the door. And in the Buddhist scriptures, it actually talks about this king in India who, when he would retire to his meditation chamber at the end of the day, he would be standing at the door of his meditation chamber and then tell himself that he will leave all his thoughts of sensuality, of ill will, and of harming at the door, and that they were not allowed to follow him inside. So if in our meditation, though, if we find them following us onto our meditation cushion and disturbing our mind, we can always gently just remind ourselves to come up, to come back to this next experience, to this next moment of an in-breath and this next moment of an out-breath. And just as soon as we can remember in meditation, oh, I got lost in thought, and then you realize, oh, I'm here again. Like I said last time, make that a moment of celebration, maybe even a moment of bringing an inner smile to your face and just reminding yourself, I'm present again. I remember to be mindful again. I might have been lost in thought, but here I am. So instead of having this expectation that in meditation you're going to just drop all your thoughts and no thoughts will come of you, good luck for most of us. So it's just a lovely practice of, as soon as you notice, just to know, oh, here I am again, and just gently pause and then bring your attention back to your breathing. Just doing that, that's why we call it a meditation practice, to bring the attention back over and over again to the next breath as soon as we remember. And so then I'm going to guide us to use the breath as an anchor in meditation. And that just simply means that we use the breath as this tool to help us stay present, to connect with the aliveness, to connect with this present moment that we're experiencing, instead of being off in the past, off in the future, like I already said, in our thoughts. Just doing our best to stay present moment by moment by moment. And just lastly, wanted to say a few words about working with the breath in daily life. So ultimately, really, the invitation, or the, I don't want to say goal, but I can't think of a better word right now. Maybe the intention is that we're not just coming here to sit and meditate, but it's really about applying mindfulness and meditation in daily life. So the encouragement really is to, whenever you can remember, to bring your mindfulness practice to remember that you're breathing even in your daily interactions. And I have to say that I find that when I'm with someone, maybe with a child or an adult, a friend, my partner or a parent, that if I'm actually still have this at least background awareness of my own body and even my breath, that I can actually be a lot more present to the person in front of me when I'm remembering, okay, there's a body here, there's a presence here that I have, and a presence that I can offer the person that I'm sitting with. And the same if you're listening to a piece of music or reading a book, if there's still this awareness of that you're embodied, it probably makes the activity that you're engaged in a lot more enjoyable. And same, of course, if you're out in nature taking a walk, if you're tuning in not just to your own breathing and to your own aliveness, but like I said earlier with the desert experience, just really tuning into the aliveness of everything around you, the sound of the birds, the trees, whatever it is that's in your visual field. It makes everything just a whole lot more enjoyable to be aware of what's going on inside of you as well. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say this evening. So I wanted to invite us into an experience in meditation. I'm going to guide us a little bit through a meditation that relates to these first 4 steps of mindfulness and breathing that the Buddha offered his community in his life. I'm not going to go through all the 16 steps, but just the most basic one that would relate to mindfulness and breathing. And so if you all want to just begin by closing your eyes. If that's comfortable, if you're not feeling comfortable closing your eyes, just maybe finding a gaze point in front of you so that your eyesight is not wandering around the room. Just an invitation to bring your awareness into the body. And if you can, allow the spine to be somewhat straight. You don't have to sit up 100% straight, but just this invitation for there to be an alertness in the body and in the mind, which can often be facilitated through a more straight spine. And at the same time, relaxing the body as best as you can. Just inviting the body to relax. And then in the midst of this embodied presence, you can bring the awareness to the sensations of breathing in your body. Simply noticing the in-breath, noticing the out-breath. And as the Buddha said in his instruction on mindfulness of breathing, breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. And as you follow your breathing inside of your body, you might notice that there's a place that's naturally the place for you where you can most easily rest your attention in the body on the breath. So for some of us, that might simply be the rise and fall of the belly that you pay attention to. Maybe the rise and fall of the chest. Maybe a sense of the whole body breathing. And some of us might most easily relate to the breath flowing in and out of the nostrils. Feeling the sensations in the back of the throat, breath going in and out. So just finding out for yourself where you can most easily connect with the sensations of breathing in the body. And as you follow the rhythms of your breathing inside the body, you might notice whether the breath is relatively short, relatively long. So the Buddha simply instructed us to pay attention and know when the breath is long, know when the breath is short. You can even bring more of a curiosity by adding and noticing if the breath is rather deep or rather shallow, if it's fast or slow, if it feels rather smooth or rough. So just noticing how each and every breath manifests inside your body. And then the third instruction is to simply notice the whole body as you're breathing in, getting a general sense of the body. Getting a general sense of the body as you breathe out, the whole body as you're breathing in, the whole body as you're breathing out. In some traditions in Buddhism, this is interpreted to mean that we're following the breath all the way in, from the beginning to the middle to the end of the in-breath, and then the beginning, middle, and end of the out-breath. So feeling the whole breath body. So breathing in, breathing out. And then the last instruction given by the Buddha around the breathing is to more fully relax and to calm the body. So you might invite your face and your jaw to relax, the neck and the shoulders, the arms and the hands, the front of the torso and the back of the torso. And the legs all the way into the feet, inviting the whole body into more of a sense of relaxation. Breathing in, I relax my body. Breathing out, I relax my body. We're going to sit together for a while, just coming into stillness, into your own more intimate meditation space. just saw online that somebody had written in that they couldn't hear very well. I'm so sorry, I did not see that earlier, that it says that the microphone needed to be closer. I really apologize that we were not able to take care of that this evening. I wish I'd seen that sooner. I apologize. It's beyond me, my mistake. And also to say that it's already 8 o'clock, so I wanted to leave time for questions, but I totally understand if you needed to get up and leave. If you wanted to ask a question, I certainly have time to stay. So just wanted to invite to see if anybody had any questions or wanted to offer a reflection or a comment before you leave. If not, I can also stay afterwards if you have an individual question. Yes?
We're supposed to be breathing. Is there a certain amount of seconds that we're inhale and exhale? Or is it really just being present with the breath, whatever it comes?
Yeah, the Buddha apparently in his practice really, when he started teaching, just offered to follow the breath, not to breathe in any particular way like in yoga. He had actually, when he went out into the forest for 6 years and practiced before his enlightenment, apparently he practiced a lot of breath control. So holding his breath in very long and then waiting and breathing out, sometimes even for minutes, holding it out. But he basically came to the conclusion that it's enough just to follow the rhythms of breathing, not to breathe in any particular way. That as far as mindfulness is concerned, it's enough just to follow the breath in and out. So, yeah. Yes.
On those same lines, I heard instruction in the past, breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. And so I think what I understand from you is it's not important, it's what happens naturally.
Yeah, it's as far as I understand it, and from everything I've read and been taught, it's really just about being mindful of the breath and just really noticing, for example, about the teachings of impermanence, to really, the reason that we're even paying attention to the breath is, yes, of course, we can maybe become more peaceful or calm, but it's really to glean in a deeper understanding about the truth of life, and one of these truths being impermanence, so that we're not so shaken by this truth of impermanence, and we can observe that, like I had said earlier, just by following the rhythms of the breath, how they can manifest differently moment to moment. So it's really more what we learn from when we are mindful of the breath, rather than breath control practices or breathing in through the nose or out through the mouth. That can be very beneficial, and I've certainly heard that in other settings. But sometimes we might not be able to breathe in through the nose. Maybe we have a stuffy nose and we can only breathe in and out of the mouth, and that's just as perfectly fine. So that we're not hindered in terms of how we can breathe or how the breath comes through. It's more about being mindful as best as we can. So that's how I understand it. Thank you. Was that in a particular tradition that you heard that? I'm curious.
No, not just meditation classes, no particular tradition.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, just guided meditation instruction.
I see. Okay. See if anybody here is saying something. Yes.
Are there ever times where you switch between focusing on the breath or a different sense? Like when we first started out after you saying, I focused on hearing for like the first part of the meditation. And that seemed to be what I was drawn to more than the breath.
I'm so glad you're mentioning that, because it's very important, and I might have failed to say that this evening, and I apologize, that there is people for whom the breath doesn't work. And for example, for a long time, I always felt like no matter how I tried to just relax into the breath, there was always this feeling I'm controlling the breath, so I could really not relax with the breath. And certainly mindfulness of breathing is only one way into mindfulness, that often we are encouraged to open up the awareness as soon as we get to sort of more of a state of concentration, to also include hearing sounds and just making that your mindfulness practice, or body sensations. We're going to go through all different aspects of mindfulness and how to get more mindfulness and different ways of how that might work. So certainly the breath is only one way of becoming more mindful of what's going on in the body. And certainly hearing and sounds is another way, that if you feel in this moment, oh, it's really a sound that's present, that's drawing my attention, that's your mindfulness, you're being aware of sounds. Or maybe there's an itching on your nose, and that's your mindfulness that you're really drawn to. So sometimes other things become stronger than mindfulness of breathing, and then we can drop the awareness of the breath and then focus on that instead and make that our mindfulness practice. Maybe a strong sensation, a strong feeling, and we're going to also learn here how to work with those skillfully in meditation. So I'm glad you're bringing that up about sound. So that's perfectly fine. Yeah. Thank you. Yes?
From my understanding or experience, mindfulness is always mindfulness of something.
Yes.
So it could be the breath, it could be sound, it could be sensation, it
Yes.
could be thought,
Yes.
it could be anything.
Yes.
But then it gives, mind is going to attach to something. It'll attach to anything going by.
Yeah.
And wander off with it. So it's just like something stable to be mindful of.
Mhm.
I notice for myself that my tendency when someone starts to speak, when I'm following my breath, is that my mind starts editorializing. But if I stay with my breaths, I just I don't have to have an opinion or a thought or a belief or anything about it. But yet I understand more than I do if I'm thinking. That's how sometimes we struggle.
Yeah. Thank you for offering that. That's very useful. I appreciate that. Yeah, we can all learn from one another in these ways. Yes, definitely. Everything can become an object of mindfulness. So it's very important how you practice with staying with your breath instead of going off to editorializing, as you call it, how the breath can help you stay away from that. So, yeah, thank you for offering that. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for the sake of time. I was told I could go up to 10 minutes over, but it's already 8 after 8, so I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for coming this evening. I hope you got some kind of benefit from the practice. And it's also my intention to actually make more time available for meditation. I noticed that the presentation part went a lot longer than I thought. I looked and said, oh my God, it's already 7:45. So I'm hoping to get a better sense of how long this takes so that we have more time for meditation starting next time. So thank you so much for your interest and for your time.
Bettina. Hi everyone, I am tonight's host, Carol. We opened the Dharma Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay close and watch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.